Ward trying to come in alone. Shoot! Score! Yanni, baby! He wins it for the Lightning! 5-4 in overtime!
Taylor the shot, redirected, score! Game 7, Montana St. Louis! We are going back to Tampa Bay! Cavalier spinning. Cavalier looking, trying to drop it off, brings it in himself, left it in the middle, shot, score!
Welcome to Thunderstruck with your host, Philip Wunderlich, and your co-host, Jake Ricker. We have a lot to talk about, Jake. We have, the draft that we just had, and we have multiple signings. So we'll start first things first. What do you think that about the draft? What do you think?
I'm very happy with the Lightning and what they did in the draft. Obviously, from a fan's perspective, it was kind of a boring draft, so to speak. They didn't make a move into the first round. They didn't have a first-round pick or anything like that. But overall, I think that's what you wanted them to do, is just, we know how good this scouting department is. We've seen them do it before. And so why go into the first round and even bother getting into that whole thing and giving up people like that? So I'm happy overall with what they did in the draft.
Yeah, I agree. Like you said, I feel like the scouting department for us is so good that I'm not really worried about going into the top, the first round. And especially considering what you'd have to give up in order to get into that first round, I wouldn't be willing to do it. I mean, you get great picks. It doesn't necessarily have to be in the first round. Who knows, this guy from the second round, Gabriel Forte, he might be one of the greatest players to ever play. You don't know what he's going to come out of.
Absolutely, 100%. And, personally for me, I don't love every single one of these picks. Like, I wish they would have gone and got some more right wingers because that's our weakest position. But again, as we mentioned, that scouting department is just so good. I'm not worried about it. I trust, hashtag trust the Yzer plan. These guys could turn out to be real studs, and so that's why, it's hard to say whether they did good or not. I think overall it's what you want them to do, is sit back, draft who they want to draft, which is what they did.
Yeah, I agree.
Going into these picks, too, one of the picks I really like was their third-round pick. He's 6'3", Russia defenseman, Dmitry Samikin, I believe his name is. He could be a real fun guy to watch, too. 6 feet, real tall, big defender, which, again, as we mentioned before, we need. I really like him. He looks like a good player. Another one, 6'1" defenseman we also got, Alex Green. I'm excited about him as well, that we got in the fourth round. Those are two defenders that I'm looking forward to see how they come up in the next couple of years.
Right. And that's one of the things we mentioned before on the podcast. We need the defensive defenseman on our team. We have people like Jake Dockchin and stuff like that, but we really need someone that will help Vazzy out and get the puck out of the net before he even reaches him.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So overall, this is a nice draft. A lot of these guys too, it looks like didn't have much league interest from what I've been able to tell. Which is personally exciting, as we said, as a Lightning fan, because like we know they've done this before, and it looks like they've done it again. They got all these guys that are off the radar, so it'll be fun to see how they develop over there. They grabbed a couple of goalies too, which is nice, because we usually don't have that many goalies on the roster. We had 3 at one point. Yeah. We currently have 4 on the roster, so it's nice to get a little depth on the goalie position there.
I agree, and you never know. I mean, these people, Magnus Krona or the other guy, I can't. Radim Selda. No, sorry, Ty Taylor. Ty Taylor's a goalie. Ty Taylor, he could be, someone that really helps out Vazzy down the road. He could be a really good backup goaltender. And who knows, maybe once Vazzy retires, they could fill in his shoes.
Absolutely, and even exciting for, because Domingue is a little bit older, obviously, than Vazzy and all that, so you might need a backup before we need a starter again. And both these guys, could be nice depth to help fill in if one of our current HL goaltenders, like Ingram, doesn't work out. So it's nice to have some depth there. You always want to have as many goals as you can because you never know. Depth is always great to have, and it's why the Lightning are one of the best teams in the NHL, is because we have so much depth and so many guys we can call up at any point in the season.
And it's kind of nice, like you said, to have that depth. I mean, we don't only have goalie depth, but we have the forward depth, we have the defensive depth.
Exactly.
Our team is deep. I mean, there's no other word for it. We also made a couple signings over the last couple of weeks. We signed Cuckoo and JT Miller and a Ryan McDonough extension on the deadline day. We didn't really do much on the deadline day. And we got a Paquette extension. What do you think about these extensions?
I like most of them. First off, let's talk about the Ryan McDonough extension. I personally really love this extension. I know a lot of people weren't crazy on the amount of years he was given, but for me, I think this is a really nice extension. The price is right for sure. I think he's undervalued. He's a very nice defenseman, great leader. We've seen what he can do briefly. And let's remember he was injured last year, so I think the price is great for him, for a guy of his caliber. But even at the 7 years, he's supposed to be about 36 when this contract expires. But if you look at other guys around the league, like for example Doughty, who got $11 million per year, and he's going to be 36 as well when he's done. So
Right.
You look at a guy at McDonough and Doughty, who are both going to be 36 at the end of their contract, but Doughty's getting 11. Whereas McDonough is only getting 6.7. I think that's a great deal. And we've seen more and more nowadays that defensemen can play further into their careers.
Yeah.
A lot of guys like Brett Burns, Duncan Keith, Chara, they all put really good numbers. Chara's 41.
Right.
Obviously he doesn't put up top-tier numbers, but he's still a guy to be reckoned with.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you. The only thing I'm kind of concerned about is the money, considering, there's some bigger fish to fry that we'll talk about later in the podcast. But I think the amount of money might be a little high. But like I said, I don't have any problems with the term. The years is fine. You can be a 40-year-old defenseman and still be decent. Like Chara is pretty decent still. And he's, like you said, he's 41 years old. I mean, I might not be a top-tier defenseman, but he's definitely, a good guy to have in your top four. And speaking of other defensemen, we signed Cuckoo as well. And I also like this signing too. I mean, we haven't really gave Cuckoo enough chance. I think he did really well in the beginning of the season when we did play him. And it would be interesting to see what comes out of this signing.
Absolutely. It's nice to have him back as well. He's another depth guy. He's basically in the same boat as Dotchin. These are two prospects that are decent prospects that we don't know much of. We've seen a little bit of them, but, again, this goes back to the depth conversation we were having. They're nice to have as depth players. We know Cooper doesn't like to play them a lot for whatever reason. But, when you can get a defenseman for $800,000, heck yeah, you're going to do that. So it'll be exciting to see if he does get his opportunity again to try and step up. We'll see what happens, but it's a nice depth signing, and it doesn't hit us much harder than cap at all. Absolutely.
And like I said, we re-signed JT Miller as well. JT Miller, I think he did pretty well for us. It maybe didn't show up as much in the playoffs, but at the Eastern Conference Finals, I mean, really, at the end of the day, who did? But
yeah, exactly. Not many people did. I mean, I like this signing a lot. I think Miller fit in very nice for Nemestikov.
Yeah, exactly.
Both of them were about the same caliber. I believe they both scored similar amounts of goals too by the end of the season. And this is his first year with the Lightning. Same thing with McDonough. These guys could get even better next year now that they're used to the team now. So I'm very happy with that. And it's a similar contract to what we've seen for Johnson and Palat, who are all at in the $5 million range. So I'm very happy with that extension.
I'm very happy with the extension too. I really like the guy. I really like JT Miller. He's a good guy for our top pair with Stamkos and Kucherov. Sorry, Stamkos and Kucherov, and I feel like he can really protect the top line. In case of injuries or stuff like that. I think that he can really step in and handle the business, I guess you could say.
Absolutely, and he is more of a tougher, so to speak, player than most of our guys on our team. He's obviously not the toughest player on the team, but for what he is, he's not bad at all. So I'm excited. He's only 25 years old too, so it'll be fun to see how he grows with the Lightning over the next couple of years. And he can play on multiple lines, which we saw last year. They were throwing him all over the place, trying to figure out where he should play. When he played on the top line, he played on the fourth line, he played on the third line. He was playing everywhere. So he's a really nice, versatile guy to have.
Speaking of tough guys, we also signed Paquette, $1 million for 1 year. I personally agree with this signing. I think it's a good signing. He's a good fourth line guy. He brings the grit that we need in our team. What do you think about it?
It's kind of tough for me. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of it just because Paquette's not my favorite player because I feel like he just doesn't give off enough production for the team. Now, obviously, he's not going to be on the score sheet every night, which we know because he's more of that grit style defenseman or forward, excuse me. But I'm just not a big fan of Paquette. It is only $1 million, so it's not bad. The Lightning, that's not bad, and the Lightning do need these types of players. So that's why I'm not completely against it. However, I think if we get a guy that can replace Paquette, I don't see him coming back to the team. So I think this is really just a placeholder, honestly, to keep Paquette around. I'm sure he's a great guy and everything, as all these guys are. But I just don't love Paquette as a player.
So you feel like it's kind of like a bumper almost.
Yeah, pretty much. I don't know. It's not my favorite, but it's only $1 million, which is not bad at all for a guy like him. Hopefully, he can keep up his scoring a little bit more consistently this year, because he had the really large, long gaps where he didn't score last season. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I'm on the opposite side. I feel like he's a good signing. We don't have the we need those intangibles like the grit and the heart and stuff like that. And I feel like he really has it. But then again, everybody's entitled to an opinion, I guess, huh?
Yeah, you're right, though. But the thing is, too, what I look at is, like we've said before, we know the Lightning have a great pool of prospects. So, for a guy like Paquette only at $1 million, is it worth it to use that cap space? You could potentially take that $1 million and put it somewhere else, wink, wink, and you could call up a guy like maybe Volkov or, any of our long list of prospects. Pierre Boulette, who I'm very, very excited for. I'm excited to see how he does. Those guys might be able to replace him. I don't know. We don't know. Obviously, we haven't seen them play yet. But that's why I don't love the Paquette signing as much as some other people might.
Right. So going back to the free agency frenzy. Like I said, we didn't really do much. We re-signed McDonough. John Tavares went to our rival Leafs. But do you feel like that we should have done more during the free agency frenzy?
Absolutely not. This team is built to win right now. We've noticed that over the past 4 years, and we've seen the Lightning do this before. There's not been a year I can remember recently where they've gone out and gotten a big fish in free agency. Correct me if I'm wrong, but with the type of caliber players that we have on this team, you really don't need to go out and spend that cap space. It's just not worth it. So, if you're a team like the Coyotes, heck yeah, you're going to make a big splash. You want to get those big time players, but for the Lightning, we don't really need it that much. So I think it's fine, and we're going to have big guys to re-sign next year, which we'll get into. So it's not worth it to spend your money on some other big time players that you don't need.
Yeah, absolutely. The only person that I think that came over during the free agency frenzy was Martin St. Louis. I believe that was a free agency signing.
Yeah, and what a legend he turned out to be.
Yeah. Going back to what you said earlier with the cap, Do you think that we have enough cap to sign Erik Karlsson?
I do. And the reason I say this is obviously right now we don't. We only have $3.4 million in cap space. But as we know, Yzerman has been able to sign guys for under what they're valued at, what they might get on another team, because he's just that good. And the Lightning have a lot of cap space locked up into, their core players. For example, you look at a guy like Ryan Callahan. He's got 2 years left at $5.8 million. That's a lot for a guy like Callahan. You could move a guy like Callahan and Braden Coburn, who's got $3.7 million, and just like that, you're almost up to $9 million in cap space, $10 million.
Right.
So it wouldn't take too much to move around to get cap space. Now, obviously, a guy like Erik Karlsson is going to eat up almost all of that cap space immediately.
Yeah.
But I think it's definitely possible to do.
I agree with you. And like you said earlier, Cedric Paquette's only signed for $1 million. So even if we have to pay him $11 million, like a Doughty contract, I think we can do it. But it's going to take a lot of pieces to be moved. There was a previous tweet out that said that Ryan Callahan looks like he's going back to the Rangers. I could see him finishing his career over in New York. But apparently everything put on hold. We saw all these rumors about Erik Karlsson actually coming to the Bolts. There was no there was a guy from TSN, Simmer, that said that the deal is finished. But then Darren Dreger said, "Hold on a minute, this is not happening right now." So,
Yep.
do you think that it's already happened? Do you think that we're just not getting word of it? Do you think that it's all under wraps, or do you think that it's like I say, just not doesn't happen yet?
Honestly, I have no clue, and that's because Yzerman is really good at keeping things quiet, and it's been really confusing because we've seen over 3 days we had Vegas was out in front, then Dallas was out in front, and then Tampa was out in front.
Yeah.
So it's really, really tough to say. I mean, from what I can tell, though, there's been a lot of top level insiders that have said, yes, something is definitely close to being done. So going off that, I do believe something is close, and I bet you absolutely Yzerman could pull something off very soon. But it's really hard to say. You really just don't know, because tomorrow, who knows, at 12 o'clock at midnight, the Stars could make a deal. Or Yzerman could. So, it's really tough to say.
And I feel as if Dallas didn't pull through with it because they said they didn't want to get rid of Heiskanen. And, there was a tweet out that said it's getting rid of Heiskanen for Karlsson is like getting rid of a top forward prospect for Connor McDavid. They're both Connor McDavid and Erik Karlsson are already proven superstars, and it's like hard to tell on what could come out of some of these prospects like Heiskanen and even Cal Foote. I mean, obviously we hope for the best, but do you think that we should trade someone like Cal Foote for Erik Karlsson?
Personally, absolutely. I think when you look into this, it really comes down to, are you willing to go all in and win a cup and maybe lose a couple of players over the next years for a Stanley Cup? How much do you value that Stanley Cup? It probably depends on certain teams. Like, for example, Blackhawks fans, they've won tons of them, so probably not. For the Lightning, we've only had one, so maybe you are willing more. But it's really just how much do you value that cup? Because if you want a Stanley Cup and you're willing to go all in for it, I think absolutely. Like you said, we don't know how these guys are turn out. Obviously, what we've seen from Sergachev early signs point to he's going to be a great player. But Erik Karlsson's a proven guy. And I think anytime you have the opportunity to acquire a generational talent, you got to do it. Just like John Tavares. The Lightning were in on John Tavares. Obviously, we didn't get him because he ended up signing for a lot of money. Yeah. But if you've got an opportunity to get a guy like that, you're going to do it. Even if he's a little bit older. Because, again, as we mentioned before, a lot of these guys can play to when they're getting really old. So I think absolutely you do that. But, it's a question to you, Bolts fans. How much do you value that next Stanley Cup for the Lightning? Because I think it's a big step for the franchise once we win that second one.
I agree. Like I said, you don't know what's going to come out of these prospects. I mean, they're called prospects for a reason.
Exactly.
They're not proven players, and sometimes prospects don't pan out. But these proven players, like I said, they're proven. You know what kind of numbers you're going to get from Erik Karlsson. You know what kind of numbers you're going to get from, like I said earlier, Connor McDavid. You know what's going to come out of it. You don't have to be guessing and say, "Oh, this is what could have happened. This is what should have happened." So I feel like it's a good move to make for getting Erik Karlsson. I think, I think that it would be a good, like I said, a good move. I'd be at the jersey store right now if Erik Karlsson signed.
Absolutely, I think everybody would. I think Bring Back Hockey might be releasing some T-shirts on Erik Karlsson as soon as that happens. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. So
it would be a huge deal. And I personally am totally fine with giving up something for it for a guy like that. I mean, he's a top tier defenseman, no doubt about it. And even if we do lose a guy like Sergachev, we still have a guy like Cal Foote, as we mentioned, who can still be a very good prospect as well, or vice versa. You never know.
Exactly. Another thing I want to talk about is Marty getting inducted to the Hall of Fame. My favorite Bolt to ever play is finally getting his chance to go into the Hall of Fame. What do you think about this, Jake?
It's so awesome. I'm so excited for him. It's so great to have another Bolt that's going to be headed into the Hall of Fame, meeting up with Dave Andreychuk. Marty was such a big part of this franchise for so long. It's too bad his time in Tampa, but, it was just amazing. He's been such an unbelievable player, so I'm very, very happy for him. Looking at his stats, how can you forget, some of his memorable goals? He's played over 1,134 games and scored 391 goals, 642 assists. That's an amazing career, and it's very exciting.
Absolutely. And, what I like about Marty is that when he came to the NHL, nobody thought that he'd be anything. I mean, he goes undrafted. He's a player that that everybody thought would be too small to play in the NHL. Everybody, they didn't expect to have this great player, especially when he came to Tampa Bay. He really fit in their lineup to become what he was. I mean, it's all the odds are stacked against him, and yet he comes and destroys records.
Yeah, he's up there for so many of them, and if you think about it, he kind of shaped the way the Lightning did things the next couple of years. I mean, look at all the guys that we have that are just like Marty, and Tyler Johnson, Beer Bullet is another one of them now. We have so many guys now, Braden Point, even Yanni Gore. The list goes on. We have so many young, smaller forwards that go to the net and make plays, and that all started with Marty.
Absolutely. He's a generational talent, if you ask me.
Yep. He was a part of the 2004 Stanley Cup team, which is something no Bolt fan will ever forget. I think this is really good for the franchise. There, as I mentioned, second Bolt now in the Hall of Fame, because it really starts us to put us even more on the map. Now that we have, and he was most of his career with the Tampa Bay, obviously. So I think this is huge for the franchise overall.
Yeah, shows that we are a hockey town,
Absolutely.
But that's all I got to talk about for this time. Unfortunately, we didn't have any fan questions because we had too many things to talk about this time. But next go around, we'll definitely have a fan questions, and who knows, we might do a giveaway too. We'll see if that happens. So, all right.
Exciting.
Have a great night, everybody.